3 words nobody expected to write. 3 words every intelligence agency on Earth is now dissecting, calculating exactly what threshold just got crossed and what happens when you cross it. Israel struck the house of Russian culture in Nabatia, southern Lebanon. Not a Hezbollah compound. Not an Iranian weapons depot. Not some dual-use facility where the lines blur. A building that belongs to Russia, to Rusvo, the official Russian state agency that operates cultural centers as direct extensions of Russian sovereign presence. Russia confirmed the strike. An official statement is coming. And the silence between that confirmation and that statement, that silence is the most dangerous thing in this entire conflict. I need to be precise here because precision is everything right now. Israel did not strike near a Russian installation. Israel struck cultural property belonging formally to a permanent UN Security Council member, one of 5 countries with that designation, one of 9 with confirmed nuclear weapons, a country with 6,000 deployed nuclear warheads, the largest arsenal on the planet. The same country whose nuclear engineers built and operated the Bushehr reactor Israel bombed weeks ago. Russia absorbed that in silence. Someone in Tel Aviv interpreted that silence as permission to continue. That interpretation may have just produced the most catastrophic miscalculation of this war. Russia has shown extraordinary, almost puzzling restraint throughout this conflict. The kind Western media stopped noticing because it became background noise, the default everyone counted on while the real action happened elsewhere. Russia watched American bases across Iraq and the Gulf get systematically destroyed. Watched Iran's nuclear infrastructure take strike after strike. Watched the entire Gulf security architecture built over 4 decades disintegrate in real time. Watched the Strait of Hormuz close, watched oil prices spiral toward what analysts 3 weeks ago called extreme and today call baseline. And Russia issued statements, called for ceasefires, used restrained diplomatic language, did what great powers do when holding position, waiting, calculating, not yet ready to move from words to something with more weight behind it. That restraint just got tested in a register never tested before. Because there's a fundamental and legally meaningful difference between attacking a country's military assets, its proxies, and attacking the sovereign cultural property of a nuclear-armed Security Council member. The House of Russian Culture was not a weapons depot. It was not a command node. It was a library, a performance space, a center doing the quiet work of projecting Russian soft power into Lebanese culture. It had a Russian flag, Russian staff. It was as unambiguously Russian sovereign territory as you can get outside Russia itself. The 1954 Hague Convention exists precisely to establish that certain structures carry elevated protection regardless of geography or surrounding conflict. Israel is not a signatory, but Russia is. And Russia does not need legal arguments to formulate its response. It needs only a decision. That decision is sitting on a desk in Moscow right now being made by someone with the authority to make it. Here's the operational question every analyst is asking, because the answer reshapes everything currently in play. What does Russia do? Not what does Russia say? What does Russia do? Those are different questions, and they have been different questions throughout this conflict. The gap between Russia's words and actions has been one of the structural features keeping this war from expanding further, faster. That gap may have just closed. Option 1, Russia issues formal diplomatic protest, demands accountability through international channels, calls emergency UN session where it has veto power, summons the Israeli ambassador in Moscow for a conversation described afterward in appropriately grave language, continues restrained condemnation while internally recalibrating what it will allow next. The international community exhales collectively. The incident becomes manageable. This is what everyone hopes for. It cannot be assumed. Option 2, Russia decides this strike, combined with Bushehr, combined with weeks watching the region it invested in get dismantled, crosses a threshold it cannot absorb without materially changing posture. And here is what makes this particularly consequential. Russia does not have to fire a single missile to change everything about this war. Russia has options between diplomatic protest and armed conflict that would fundamentally alter the military balance overnight. Consider what Russia could provide Iran that Iran does not currently have. S-400 and S-500 air defense systems, a generational leap beyond what Israel's Air Force has encountered. Systems that would narrow potentially to elimination. The operational window Israel has been flying through for months, targeting intelligence drawn from Russian satellite assets with resolution and continuity that changes the accuracy calculus of every Iranian strike. Electronic warfare capabilities that could systematically degrade GPS and communications Israeli and American operations depend on. Russia has had all of this throughout the conflict. The question has been whether Russia would provide it. Until last night, the answer appeared to be not yet. Option 3 is what no scenario planning war gained because until Israeli munitions hit that building, it was not meaningfully on the board, where Nabatia is not an incident but a trigger, where Russia's accumulated patience, its Bushehr silence, its weeks of watching, reaches a conclusion that restraint failed to produce the outcome restraint was supposed to produce, and that a different kind of signal is required. Not because Russia wants escalation, but because Russia has calculated that the cost of continued restraint now exceeds the cost of a demonstrable response. Great powers have made that calculation before. The historical record of what follows is not uniformly encouraging. Here's what matters about Bushehr. And when Israel struck it, Russia's response was calling the attack deeply concerning and a violation of international norms. The diplomatic equivalent of a yellow card, formal displeasure that stopped well short of consequence, that statement was received in Tel Aviv, analyzed, weighed, and someone concluded the yellow card did not foreclose future action. Whether that conclusion reflected an accurate read of Russia's actual tolerance threshold or a catastrophic misreading of patience that had specific non-negotiable limits, the next 72 hours will begin to answer. The official Russian statement will be studied with intensity few diplomatic documents receive. The specific language will tell trained readers things the surface meaning does not convey, whether it uses the word sovereignty in connection with the Nabatia building, and whether it links Nabatia to Bushehr as a pattern rather than isolated incidents, whether it invokes cultural property protection frameworks, whether it makes a specific demand with a timeline attached or just records objection for the historical record, whether it signals posture change or continuation of existing policy. Those distinctions are not academic, they are the difference between a bad week in an already catastrophic conflict and the beginning of a genuinely different war. And here is what makes this moment uniquely dangerous in ways that go beyond the Russia-Israel dimension. None of the other pressures already pushing this conflict toward the edge have paused. Kuwait's oil storage, 14 days remaining, with Hormuz closed. Iraq, 6 days. When those tanks hit capacity, production stops. Not slows, stops. And when Gulf oil production stops, the price impact is not gradual, it is vertical. Analysts modeling $150 3 weeks ago now run $200 plus scenarios, not as tail risk, but as central case projections. Qatar's LNG disruption has not reversed. Europe lost Russian gas in 2022, restructured its entire energy import architecture around Qatari supply, now faces both major external sources unavailable simultaneously. The energy crisis European governments have been managing is tipping past where assurances hold against supply arithmetic. Iran's midnight strike cycle continues uninterrupted. The structured campaign designed to prevent recovery windows, keep every defense system simultaneously stressed, ensure no target gets time to restock and repair. Israel's degraded radar and alert network, operating at a fraction of designed capability after weeks of targeted strikes, remains unrepaired overnight. The population receives less warning than the system was built to deliver. The gap is real, and it remains real. And Iran's response cycle has not ended. K-bar Shekin missiles, Fatah hypersonics hitting Haifa's refinery in direct reciprocal response to Israeli strikes on Iranian infrastructure were not final moves. They were the latest in an exchange neither side has defined an endpoint for. Every day this conflict adds a dimension that the day before was not visible on the map. Azerbaijan territory drawn into Iran's warning framework. American water infrastructure in Iran struck. Iranian threats to Gulf desalination plants, existential for cities with no natural fresh water. European energy security collapsing in parallel with Gulf economic security. Oman, the quietest and most diplomatically careful state in the region, breaking silence to call for immediate end because even the most cautious actors concluded damage crossed a threshold. Passive observation cannot manage. Each dimension arrived without adequate warning. Each changed what this conflict is. None have been resolved. And today, Russia joins that list, not as observer, not as commentator, but as a party whose sovereign property, whose flag, whose cultural presence just took a direct hit from Israeli munitions. Trump has promised an attack unlike anything seen before, has not said when, has not said what it consists of, has not defined objectives beyond Iran's capitulation, an outcome Iran has demonstrated through weeks of sustained pressure, zero indication of pursuing. Netanyahu said Israel will go to the end, defining the end as complete neutralization of Iran's threat without specifying what actions produce that or how long the path runs. Two leaders saying they will not stop, neither defining what stopping looks like in terms a battlefield outcome could actually deliver. Russia's statement has not come yet. When it does, the language will carry the weight of everything accumulated since this conflict began. Every strike absorbed, every protest issued and disregarded, every recalibration that happened in silence in Moscow, while the world's attention was fixed elsewhere. The question defining not just the next phase of this conflict, but potentially the next phase of global order is simple. Simple to ask, impossible to answer until Russia answers it. What did Vladimir Putin decide that building in Nabatia was worth? Because the answer, when it comes, will not be contained within Lebanon's borders. It will not be contained within this conflict's borders. It will arrive in every foreign ministry that has been watching this war, updating threat assessments, recalculating alliances, trying to understand whether the world they built security assumptions around still exists. The midnight sky over Israel was full of fire 3 nights ago. Kuwait has 2 weeks oil storage left. Water warning issued and received. Qatar stopped LNG exports. Iraq's American bases are rubble. And somewhere right now, a statement is being drafted in Moscow that every intelligence service on the planet is waiting to read. The building in Nabatia, with its Russian flag and Russian books and Russian cultural programming, was supposed to be outside the edges of this map. It is not outside anymore, and what happens next depends entirely on what Russia decides that crossing means.